Welcome to Soul Thrive, where we explore spirituality through healing trauma, shadow work, and applying the laws of the universe in order to master ourselves without the fear of the unknown.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Soul Thrive podcast.
Hey, guys.
Today, my wish for Christina was if we could talk about connecting with deceased loved ones. I know it's a topic that a lot of people kind of want to know more about. It can be a heavy topic, of course, like after you experience loss of a loved one, could be a pet as well.
Yeah.
People often wonder, are we connected? What are the signs? How do you know if they're trying to communicate with you? And it's funny, in Serbian tradition, or like our belief is that the spirit is still here on earth for like 40 days after they. So I'm curious. Yeah. Anyway, there's so much information out there, so I want to like break it down.
Okay, so we'll break it down. So spirit is with us no matter what. Okay, but here's the thing that I need people to understand. When we're talking about spirit and we're talking about energy, and as a medium, when I'm communicating to deceased loved ones, it's more than just this concept that I'm talking to someone who's crossed over. Like, oh, I'm seeing a physical person or I'm seeing a physical entity of some sort. Sometimes it's just a psychic impression or psychic echo or some form of an energy.
What is a psychic like?
So it's an energy. It's a thought form. It's an energy. It's a consciousness that still exists within that stream and that family's DNA and ancestral
after
line.
They have passed. Right.
But obviously people want to know, is like my deceased loved one's soul still around us? Absolutely. Especially that, like I said, that consciousness or that energy. And sometimes when I'm reading someone, depending on how that all works out, depending on how that information needs to stream in, it could be physically, I actually see a deceased loved one, they show up, or it's an interpretation of that deceased loved one's consciousness that's coming in, that's helping me understand more about an evolution in the spiritual development in that family dynamic. So it's more intrinsic than people realize. It's multi-layered, and it's not as simple for me to describe. The easy form would be like, your deceased loved ones exist and they're still walking around and they're still with us, and their energy is with us, that soul consciousness is with us, and they're helping us heal the grief or helping us walk through our experiences in our day-to-day life.
Right. And is that, so just to clarify, is it that our connection with them is the strongest in the 40 days following the death?
So the 40
but they're
days
always here.
So the 40 days could be a cultural thing, but I do actually believe that the soul, after it crosses over, I don't like to do readings right away. I allow it to recognize that it's crossing over. It's doing like a life review. It's going through a life review and its human experiences.
Kind of like, what are the lessons learned?
Yeah, so what were the lessons learned? Examining and observing from a different point of view. So they're visiting family and experiences from a different point of view. They're looking at their choices. It's a full life review for 40 days. So I don't like to impede in that process. That's why I'm always like, if something happens where someone passes away and someone reaches out immediately, I'm like, no. Right. I'd rather after 40 days, then we can have the conversation about connecting with a deceased loved one. We also need to understand that mediumship is like, the reason why mediums exist is because we're like that communication between this reality and the reality that the soul exists. And we're just the medium that helps the communication.
Right.
But the reason why it also exists is because it's to teach humanity that there is more
than the 3D experience,
and that there's more after someone crosses over, that there is life after death. And the problem with that is most people don't understand that, because what they want to do is they want to focus on the image and the memory and the experience of the deceased loved one, and they want to hold on to that relationship in that form. And so the grief, they never really process the grief properly. They never really allow themselves to work with the grief for spiritual evolution. So a medium's job is to help someone heal grief, but to also help them spiritually evolve. The issue that I do see quite frequently, though, is that people will go to mediums and get multiple readings talking to the same person over and over again, and that person in their life and in their experience is not spiritually evolved. They're not,
The
they're not,
medium isn't.
no, not the medium, the
Oh,
person
the
that
person.
continuously goes and gets the
Oh, the
reading
person
done.
who's getting right.
Right, because they're not registering that they need to heal and improve their experience based on what this contrast, this death created
Within
themselves,
them.
right?
Right.
Because it's like a catalyst sometimes, you know, when you think about someone passing on, it impacts everybody that's associated with that person. Now, we could understand this on a grander scale. We could see when we saw like Princess Diana die, or Prince, or celebrity of some sort that did a lot for humanity. It impacted communities. It
Right.
impacted, it created a big ripple effect. And that's kind of this catalyst to awaken us to more empathy, more compassion, more connection, more community. So that's why it's important for us to really work with spirit and learn from spirit and become aware of what we need to change in our physical realities now, so that there's an expansiveness and an evolution in our growth and our experiences.
Okay, so there's two things come to mind that I would like to kind of discuss today. One is, how do you actually go about processing grief, and how can the right medium help you do that? And two, after we talk about that, how do you then, without a medium, because to your point, like, I'm not going to keep going back to the medium to, like, I want to start developing my own relationship with a person who's passed, with the spirit. So what are some of the ways that they communicate, and how can I continue to sort of nurture that relationship for my own evolution? But let's start with
The grief.
You know, someone has passed, time has gone by, now it's like, how do you actually begin that process, and what is the role of a medium to do that?
So if you do go see a medium and you're willing to listen and hear with what the message is that they are to deliver, most of the time, most mediums will deliver really like evidential things. Like they're going to say, this is, because you also want to communicate to make sure that they're connecting with the right spirit. So, because there's a lot that can come through when you're channeling this type of information or connecting to that different realm. So you need to become aware that you're showing evidence that you're communicating to the right person, and then, or that fragment of energy or that psychic echo of whatever that experience is, and then that consciousness is being streamed forward. But when let's say if I'm giving a reading and I'm talking to a deceased loved one, I'm looking at the struggles that soul energy went through and how it has impacted everybody in their experiences and in their lives, and what is important for people to register as far as their trauma goes in order to heal. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're connecting to that soul energy, and what you're doing is you're looking for them to kind of now make you feel better about whatever those experiences were that you had with that soul in your physical reality. So if you can't get over your father's death, right, then you have to examine what that relationship dynamic offered you, what was happening in your reality. And you can't just look at the good, you have to look at the
Look
bad.
at the bad too,
You
yeah,
have to
because
be
I
able
think
to
sometimes when people pass, we don't
we
want to look at.
automatically just go into like, oh,
Yeah.
but he was such a good person, and maybe the soul was, that person who's crossed over was a beautiful, magical, great person, but maybe what they're trying to teach you now is that you could also be that great version of yourself. And what would that look like if you took the experience of that death and then grew from that point of perspective, and then evolved in that experience and continued that type of process in your day-to-day life? But most people don't, because maybe that relationship, maybe dad was really good to everybody externally, but
Right.
wasn't necessarily good at being emotionally there for you at the time and the experiences that you need. So he was a good person, but he didn't teach you how to step into your confidence so you could define a better sense of you, so that you can operate in your world in a specific way.
And that's probably painful for people to deal with that, because
Right.
then it's like you're
So-
presenting him in a
when we're-
negative light.
Right.
Yeah.
And not only that, but when you're talking about the pain and the grief of the experience, you've got to examine what that pain actually is trying to represent.
Right. Or is it, or also maybe like how it's connected to even your entire lineage? If we use an example, because it might be easier to understand. We talked about my grandmother.
Yeah.
Right? My dad's mother, when she passed, and how difficult that was. I think through our sessions and our work together, you kind of helped me understand sort of like what she was trying to teach, even through her hardships. And it was like, you have to learn the lessons that she struggled with.
Yes.
In order to stop it
Oh, yeah.
from happening again and again and again.
Yeah. I mean, I think now if we normalized mediums being this opportunity for us to connect with our deceased loved ones so that we can break generational patterns
Mm-hmm.
and we can break these cycles in our experiences, then we as in humanity in general, we are spiritually evolving. We're stopping these behavior ancestral patterns that keep repeating over and over and over again. It's nice to go to a medium and be able to like connect with your deceased loved ones and hear all the positive things. It's
Mm-hmm.
nice for you to know that you're not alone, that you're being loved, that you're being protected, and all of those things are fundamentally true. But then I have to go a level deeper in that and say to myself, okay, well, let's examine why you're feeling life is a threat. Let's examine why you feel alone. Let's examine what are these feelings? And now, having had this person pass on, what are they trying to fundamentally make you understand about your own experiences? And how can you empower yourself enough to move through that? And ultimately spiritually evolve so that
Mm-hmm.
you're breaking this pattern. Let's say maybe your family dynamics have always been like you felt you didn't belong, so your dad went through experiences where he struggled with belonging himself, and then
Mm-hmm.
your great grandfather, and so on and so forth. So there's a generational link here, and a medium's job is supposed to be helping people work through those layers of that experience. And so it's nice to connect with, like I said, a deceased loved one and be able to know that they're there for you. But it's even nicer if you know that they're willing to spiritually evolve with you. Now there are layers to certain experiences because we can go into like contrasts around people who have gone and lost people through like suicide and accidents and other
Mm.
things, right?
Like if the death was like
Right,
very,
right,
yeah,
sudden, and
yeah.
or sickness and all that. And sometimes it's hard for us to understand what does that have anything to do with my spiritual evolution. This person's life was taken out of,
Does, and sorry, something just comes
yeah.
to me. Does the manner in which they die, is that also,
Yes,
does
it's
that
a
have a
catalyst.
significance?
Oh yeah.
Like even for them, like the way they exited.
Yes, yes, big time. It has a spiritual evolution from our third dimensional thinking
Mm.
and from where they're existing in the spiritual realms as well. There's a massive impact when something like that happens. I mean, obviously there's so many different spectrums when it comes to loss and grief, and the worst of them all is losing a child, because like that's not fair and that's not right. But again, I mean, when we're looking at those experiences, losing a child, it creates such a ripple effect in humanity and in making us pause and reset about our values and our beliefs and like how people operate with one another. And we see so much physical loss going on in our world now today,
Mm-hmm.
and yet we still don't know. It's like a shock to our system. We still don't know how to operate with these experiences and with these losses. And there's a like a surrendering that needs to happen to the loss and the grief of those experiences, because we're living in a world right now where resistance is so heightened, and there's such a you against me mentality and an
Mm-hmm.
I perspective that we don't have room right now to allow experiences for us to help us evolve. And I would like more people to look at these experiences and say, okay, how can I show up for humanity in a different point of view and be able
Mm-hmm.
to heal myself and help become an example for others as well. So there's, like I said, being a medium is a beautiful experience. I love doing it, but I cannot do it from the point of perspective where I'm just connecting with your deceased loved ones and it just feels good. Like, it has to be real. There's a
Mm-hmm.
reason for it, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to also accept what that experience is all about in order for you to better your experience in this life and in the things that you're going to choose moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And so, if we talk about sort of like developing the relationship with them, obviously we hear like some of the signs or symbols are like seeing butterflies or
Mm-hmm.
seeing like dimes or
Mm-hmm.
seeing feathers.
Yep.
But outside of that, what are some other ways that they can like show up?
Dreams.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Yeah, your
Okay.
dreams, definitely they could show up in your dreams. Sometimes it's through like scents. Sometimes it's through just like a knowing that their energy's around you. Sometimes it's just someone walks up to you and says something that they would have said.
Right. Or maybe like a song comes on
A
or
song
something.
comes on that, like, sometimes that's just like a message that's coming through. There's so many ways that, spirit can come through and communicate with us. I mean, obviously, you want to move through a vibrational stance. So you want to get better at getting out of your grief, because that's low vibrational. You want to move into acceptance, and you want to move into connection.
And how does one do that? Is it like just sitting with the painful feelings and just feeling them to get out of grief
and moving up that experience, and trying to move your energy up towards joy as much as you can, because the more you operate from that space, the easier it is for you to connect with your deceased loved ones.
I had a crazy experience the other night.
Okay,
this was like a couple of days after my birthday. So I have like a little side table that's next to my bed, and I have a picture of my grandmother, and I have a dime that I saw randomly on the street. Like, this is like years ago. I just like kept it, picked it up.
Okay.
Set it in front of the picture of me and her.
Okay.
My side table started shaking.
Okay.
It was like 10 p.m. Like, I'm not crazy. Like, it wasn't like in the middle of the night. And like,
I got
Luna was like, oh, because she was like sleeping on the bed. Like, we both got up. I was like, is this noise coming from my bathroom? Like, it was this like weird sound. And I just like looked, and my entire side table was shaking and making noise. And I was like, what the fuck? And I've just been seeing a lot more butterflies. Like, every time I go out, here's one, there's another one, there's another one. I was like, what the hell? Like,
well, I mean, that's nice that your grandmother shook you to that core. It can be a little scary and jarring to have that type of experience show up. I've had many experiences like that where things will get knocked over, or I'll lose things. I'm like, where the hell are my keys? Where are my keys? And sometimes that's spirit in general, like your guides or whatever are kicking in and kind of like playing, like, slow down or assess, or you're ungrounded. And maybe your grandmother was coming in to say, like, life's about to shake up. You know what I mean? Life is about to give you everything that you've desired. And I'm getting like lights as I'm communicating this. So that usually is a sign when I'm getting like lights or images about certain things, that there is like a warning that needs to happen here. Like, you are being warned about your experiences in your physical reality, and how you should operate with more of this conviction or more of this assertiveness. And that would be the message.
Yeah.
No, literally, that's the message. Like, sorry, I don't know how else to tell you that.
Now you're
literally, that's what your grandmother was trying to tell you. Like, things are going to get shooken up, and you know how to navigate through that now, and you don't have to worry about your physical reality being a threat to you.
Right. Yeah.
And there's an evolution in that, right? Like, you have to know, like, your whole entire life, if you looked at your trauma and your experiences, you would look at things and you would say, yes, this felt like a threat. Because everything in my life, up until I left a war-torn country was a threat. And I operated in that mentality for such a long time. And when your grandmother died, that impacted you so deeply, because she was the only person who regulated you. Right? And so if you had your grandmother regulate you in that chaos or in those experiences,
I have no anchor, basically. Yeah.
Right. But what it's coming down to right now is she's saying, it doesn't matter. I'm still here, and I'm still anchoring you. Right? It's okay. I get it. Do you understand? Like, it's those experiences. And so she's taking that, and you're building on that. Right? So she had such a huge impact on you because she did that for you. She regulated you. And then when you lose someone, like, I get that. I understand that, right? Like, I know when my grandmother passed away too, that was a big deal as well, because she was so big on like bringing joy in our environment when there was so much chaos in our environment growing up. And so whenever I see my grandmother, I'm like, ooh, celebrations are coming.
Right.
Like, every time I see my grandmother, I'm like, oh my God, yes, this is a celebration. Good things are coming into my life. But when I see my grandfather, he always tells me death is coming.
Oh.
But in a way where he's like, don't worry, I'm going to help them cross over.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, thank you so much for being a guide and a light, because I can't be a guide and a light in that physical, in that reality, in that realm, but I have someone anchored in there that's serving that purpose. And so when my grandfather comes to me and he says, don't worry, you don't have to worry about this experience because you may feel helpless in not being able to serve to that degree. My grandfather's like, I will help guide them, especially if they're alone, especially if they feel like they don't have anybody to support them. Especially because I recently, this was a few years ago, I had a reading with this girl, and it was just a regular reading. It was a mediumship reading, but her soul energy and higher self had come in, and all these things were going, and she was struggling for years with addiction. And she finally was trying to sober up, and she had gone to a sober living establishment, and she'd gone to rehab, and she got out, and she had met someone in rehab, which I didn't think was the best for her.
Oof. Yeah.
But she was like, we're both trying to hold each other accountable to get sober. So we have this reading, and instantly I just see her ancestral lineage shows up, a whole bunch of ancestors show up, and I'm like, oh my God, she's gonna cross over. Like, I knew. And I said to her, I'm like, you realize you cannot in any which way go into the direction of even having one more time of one more fix. You will die. And I don't deliver those types of messages, but because it was so in my face impactful, and you know what she said to me? I know. No, she knew. She had already known that if she did this one more, she's like, I know I'm gonna die. The girl, I like got chills, because literally she was still in front of me, and she's like, I'm aware of what my contract is, and I know. She's like, if I do it one more time, I'm gonna die. And she did.
Oh wow.
She passed away. Yeah. So it's hard. It's hard, right? Like, you have to understand, like, where I'm standing from, and the things that I'm seeing, and the things that I'm reading, and the things that there's so many layers to it. I know some people want to make it fluffy and nice and beautiful, and it is a beautiful experience, but we also have to have some realistic expectations about these experiences as well. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, I do think that when a soul accepts their death, or a soul accepts their experience, it's different from what we perceive in the third dimensional perspective. Because in the third dimensional perspective, nobody wants to die. Everybody wants to preserve as much as they can, and nobody wants to die young. Everybody wants to have a long, fulfilled life, and nobody wants pain, and nobody wants to die from an illness. Like, I don't, right? But I don't know what my future necessarily has in store if I'm not taking very good care of my health, and so on and so forth. So, but there's an acceptance in the soul. A soul knows. Mm-hmm. And then when you do cross over, there's a sense of freedom. There's a sense of liberation. There's a sense of knowing the bigger picture and seeing things from a completely different point of view. And that's what they're trying to teach us. They're trying to make us understand that. Does that make sense? They're trying to make us understand, this is where we're at. This is where you could be, and let me help guide you in that. Mm-hmm. But sometimes people get fixated on like I said, that experience with that person and what that meant for them, that they don't necessarily know how to move past it. But that's a lot to say with even just day-to-day experiences with how people operate. They don't necessarily know how to move through contrast or through conflict, because they're thinking about it in the I perspective, in that lower vibrational stance. Mm-hmm. Makes sense? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I hope that kind of clarified a little bit, but I definitely do want us to talk more.
Oh, there's part 2, 3, 4.
Well, yeah, definitely. But that was a little bit of an understanding, and I hope that I kind of explained it in a way that doesn't make people feel scared to experience spiritual evolution and to connect with their deceased loved ones, because there's so much wisdom there and so much opportunity for you to learn. Like you just said right now, your grandmother is coming in with a force of energy, and she wants you to have that type of energy too, so that you're walking in your life with conviction.
Right.
Versus you being this scared, timid soul that something bad's always going to happen.
Yeah.
So there's more to it.
Makes
but
sense.
I will teach more about this, I think.
Yeah.
And talk more about this. Okay.
Love it. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in, guys.